Hey, Lindsay, thanks for taking out the time today to chat with me. And I wanted to bring you on. So, for one, to highlight you across my platform and also, hear your backstory, hear, about you a little bit deeper and ask some questions because I'm super intrigued seeing you on a couple different interviews. So, thanks so much for coming out today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you reached out.
Yeah. So, if our audience doesn't know, can you chat a little bit about who you are, where you're at today in business, and we'll jump into it from there.
Yeah, so my name's Dr. Lindsey Duguet. I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania. I've never lived out of state. I live here with my husband. He's from France, moved here 13 years ago. Together, we're married. We have three kids, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, and our third and last one will be 2 at the end of this month. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I still practice full time, actually. I'm regional director of several hospitals with a health system in Pennsylvania. So that's taking up a lot of my time as well as the kids. And to add on top of that, we obviously do real estate. I do this basically as my second full time job. And my husband, he used to be a mechanical engineer. That's how he got here from France. He was on an international work assignment. We met in Philadelphia when I was in medical school, and he was here as the engineer. When we had our first kid, he gave that up and he was a stay at home dad for a year, which he hated, and he wanted to do something else. So that's where we got into real estate, and he does our real estate portfolio full time now. He has real estate professional status. So yeah, that's where we're at in life.
Nice, nice. Well, for one, I would say the hardest thing probably is to raise the three kids and be able to do all the stuff that you guys are doing. I have a 13-month-old, so I
Oh yeah,
you know
you're in the thick of it.
can't even imagine three. So congrats on that. And then, for him transitioning outside of that W-2 and then going into the real estate portfolio, how was that transition for him? Was it pretty fluid, or were there some things, some kinks that you had to work out while he was getting into, running that portfolio?
Yeah, I think it was not to speak for him, but just from the conversations we've had, it was harder for him going full time W-2 to being a full time dad than it was going back from full time dad to get into real estate. He's very happy to be out talking to adults more again now than just the kids at home, which he's a great dad. He's downstairs with the three right now, so we can have some, private conversation on the podcast here. But he's very much, his mechanical engineering. He's a numbers guy. He's a spreadsheet guy. He does all of our underwriting on our deals. We joke that he used to be the fancy French guy that couldn't change a light bulb when I first met him, and now he does a lot of our rehabs for our personal properties that we own
Oh, really?
locally. So, I mean, he does electric, flooring, drywall, plumbing. He's literally dug an 8-foot hole and changed a sewer line on one of our properties before, which actually had to do that twice, and he never wants to do that again. So he has truly gotten hands on into the real estate portfolio.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely way more than I could say I have. So
Way more
good.
than he bargained for when we first started in real estate, too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why? So let's start there on at least building out your portfolio. Why did he opt to do that versus hiring someone?
Yeah, so part of it was just lack of capital at the beginning. We, had our at that time our first little kid at home, and I was working a lot of extra shifts at the hospital to fund these deals, and all the things that we were buying at the beginning were just between him and I, and they were very heavy rehab properties. So we
Okay.
would run out of capital. So instead of hiring a contractor to do it fast and do it right, he was learning how to do things on YouTube and trading, that lack of extra capital for his time. And it's a skill that it's good to have now, especially as we're getting these bigger properties and we're doing the walkthroughs, or even hiring contractors, and they're saying, oh yeah, it's going to take X amount of hours and X dollars to do that. And he's like, well, no, actually I've done it and I know it's not going to. So it's good that he has this skill set now, but we're definitely using our time in other ways besides doing everything ourselves now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that I mean, a lot of people start out that way.
Yeah.
They end up doing all that type of work, and then it makes them a better investor because they can go out to properties, like you said, walk the property and be very knowledgeable on, if that property is going to need $50,000 worth of work or $5,000 worth of
Yeah,
work.
it could make and break your budget. And we didn't know what we didn't know at the beginning. And we definitely made some mistakes that way.
Yeah, I used to be a fireman, so like applying that to seeing properties, it really helps me out. But that really gives paves the ground, for ultimately being more successful. And so, as you guys were you guys buying single families? I take that probably single families starting out.
Yeah, starting out, it was single families, duplex. We did some direct mail campaigns. So I was looking for off market deals, sending letters to some elderly landlords that owned the places in their own name, not really doing it as a business under an LLC. And I'd said, send letters saying, hey, can I buy your property? So we got a 4 unit that way. The biggest that we've done, just my husband and I, was a 10 unit, which we actually still own, and we had a great refinance out of it. But yeah, we've done partnership deals since then when we reached our
Okay.
ceiling.
Okay. And is it all in Pennsylvania?
So everything that just Michael and I own ourselves in our own personal LLCs are in Pennsylvania, but we do
Okay.
have JV joint venture deals with other partners that are out of state. And when we're being the general partners on the syndication deals, those are all out of state except for one in Pennsylvania, closer to Philadelphia. So it's a mix.
Okay. All right. And so, um, how did it feel going from doing this all between you two, then going out and actually doing a joint venture? Did that feel pretty foreign?
It felt, well, it was definitely foreign at first, especially for myself, giving up some of the control. It was definitely a mindset shift for myself to go from owning 100% of the pie to, okay, well, we can own more pies if we, take out just smaller pieces of equity and we're not doing everything ourselves. So once we got over that, or once I specifically got over that mindset, it was a good feeling to know that we don't have to do everything ourselves anymore. And if we have a problem and we're on vacation, one of our other partners can help deal with that. So it is a good thing overall.
Yeah, definitely a good thing. Well, so before we go deeper into that, what did you guys learn and what were the things that you guys put into place as you were building your own portfolio that could help out some listeners, for themselves if they're just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, just starting out, we were, like I said, we didn't know what we didn't know. We were trying to do everything ourselves. We were not reaching out for help. We were not asking other people, how did you, respond to this in this situation? So we definitely did make a lot of mistakes, and, you definitely grow and learn from your mistakes to not make them again, hopefully. But like our very first property, we didn't have any actual contract with the contractor. We paid him up front. Guess
Yeah.
who didn't see that money again still to this day? To my knowledge, he has a warrant out for his arrest, which was years ago. I haven't gone to court, so I don't think he's been arrested yet. So yeah, that was a huge thing that we learned right from the get-go. Make sure you're vetting the contractors, make sure you have an actual contract. Don't pay everything up front. Since then, we always do draws. Each stage of the rehab, we're paying out and draw, or if we're using a bank for the rehab, they're paying out and draws too. Even things just like doing contracts and setting up the LLCs. We were doing all of this on our own instead of actually contacting a lawyer who then, when they're looking back at the first LLCs we had set up, say, hey, you missed this, you didn't do this right. So we again, it was just a bad mindset that we had at the beginning, that we had to do everything ourselves, which we absolutely should not have been doing. So that's one huge piece of advice for any beginner, middle or advanced investor. Make sure you're asking questions if you don't know the answer to it, and talking to other people.
Yeah, and actually consulting with an attorney, right? I mean,
Yes,
especially a
huge.
lot of a lot of people save, talking about saving money. You guys saved it on the rehab and fixing up the properties, but speaking of hiring an attorney and actually going and combing through, what paperwork needs to be what, is just like hiring yourself, or another professional that's licensed to
Yes,
actually do what you're supposed to do.
yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that that's something that's really missed, especially in that first couple of years of investing.
Yeah, I mean, especially at the beginning, a lot of people don't have that extra money and they think, oh my gosh, I have to pay a lawyer a couple $1,000s to go over or write a contract, set up my LLC property. So they think of that as an extra cost, but really you're saving yourself money instead of getting sued later down the road and you don't have, your LLC set up correctly, and then you lose your entire portfolio, or God forbid, even, your personal assets from there. So it needs to be part of your budget as you're buying the house. You need X amount of money for the down payment. You need X amount of money for closing fees. You need X amount of money for lawyer fees to make sure everything's set up correctly. It's just, you have to put it in your underwriting and set it aside from the beginning.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that, because there's so many things that you could be sued for, and really after the fact too,
Yes.
stuff that you don't remember.
Yep.
So it's always good to have that lined out by, a professional that's an attorney that does this stuff.
Yeah.
Is there, as you were building up, are there some things that you guys did system wise to be more efficient?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
Yep. My husband, he got more professional bookkeeping software. He hired a virtual assistant that we use full time. He also owns it's called menfashion.com. It's kind of a high end dress blazer men fashion company.
Okay.
We have a VA for that, different VA for real estate purposes. And that's taken freed up a lot of our time to do more important things like partnering, networking, going over and underwriting deals instead of just dealing with tenant phone calls. My husband specifically has a lot of processes in place for vetting tenants, getting tenants to fill out paperwork and everything. And our VA has taken over a lot of that as well. So, and that, again, that's an upfront cost. We have to now budget for the VA, but that small cost that we're paying her is freeing up so much time. There's a really, really good book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan, and it talks about that. You need to stop thinking about the cost it's taking today and think about the big picture and what can you actually get out of it by offloading things that you can use your time and money better for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that book's really good. He wrote out that book just because, he had a time in his life where it was like, you know, I could do it myself. And everybody has that trap where it's like, I can do it myself because it will take me 5 minutes. I know, me too, all the time, still today.
Yep.
I can do it within 5 minutes versus, spending an hour to write up a system for someone to do it,
Yep.
which is going to take me an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yep.
So, how do you get out of that trap? I mean, I know, obviously you raised your hand and I did too, but how do you get out of that trap or at least a portion of that trap so you can be more successful at, those more dollar productive activities?
Yeah, I think it's a daily limiting belief to get over, something you need to look at every single day. I mean, that's why we have an au pair that lives with us. People think that's fancy. It's not. It is financially responsible. We
Yeah.
have 3 kids, and this is one of the huge reasons we can do what we do, because to me, I don't get joy out of dropping my kids off and picking them up at school. That's just stress in the traffic. She does that so I can do other things. And then when they come home, I can actually spend quality time with them. And that's just in the personal life. That's my who, not how. And it's the same way in real estate. Another book by actually Dan Sullivan is 10X, not 2X, but it also talks about that. Focus on the 20% that's actually making your business make you money, and not the 80% busy work that you either don't have to do because it's not bringing money to your business, or you don't like to do, and you can offload it to somebody else. So it's really something you need to you can evaluate in any area of your life, whether it's fitness, personal, or business.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I agree. Well, so taking this, right? So who not how, you guys took that and implemented it in the sense of, partnering up with people and doing JVs.
Mhm.
Um, and that can really make you go faster and farther, especially with other people's capital and everything else. So,
Mhm.
in a deal, you usually have like the project manager or the, person that's finding the property and then, making sure it goes from A to Z.
Mhm.
And then also that deal finder and then someone that has the capital. So where in the JV are you guys with those deals? Are you different sections or are you guys always taking one position?
It's different sections on different deals. Like right now, we're under contract for an 8 unit. We found the deal, we negotiated the deal. We're bringing some of our own money, and Michael will be managing it. But then we're having other partners coming on to help with some of the actual online marketing, staging pictures and stuff that they don't have to be here physically. They're not the boots on the ground we are. So that's one particular JV. We have other JVs that are out of state where we have somebody else who found the deal. They're the boots on the ground. And my husband, because of his website design, SEO, SEM, he's doing the marketing for that. So it really depends on the different deals. Some of them we are more, adding our money. We have less minimum involvement. Obviously, any JV deal, you have to have some active component, but some deals we have less so active than other deals. Like this 8 unit JV, we are very, very active in that one versus some of the other ones. So each deal is a little bit different, which is fun. So we don't have to be 100% active in
Yeah.
every single deal, because we do have our who not hows on other deals.
Yeah. And you said networking a couple minutes ago, but I would assume that that's how you met these people to JV with.
Yes. Everybody, but just a very small handful we've met through networking. Most of them, I should say, were from our mastermind. Some of them were from people that I've met through the hospital, word of mouth, that we started to build a relationship with. My brother, obviously, I've known him for a long time, so that was one of the few. But by and large, most of them that we partnered with have been through networking through other real estate groups, either meetups that we've met people or the mastermind that I'm in. So yeah, it's really building that relationship.
How long did it take, you meet Jim or Suzanne, and how long did it take until you felt comfortable saying, "Hey, I want to joint venture with this person"? Did it take, was it right off the bat? Just to give some people some context,
Yeah.
especially, going into maybe a deal that is a two family or a three family, but it seems massive, 50
Yeah.
unit or 100 unit apartment complex. How'd you do that? And how long did it take?
Yeah, so there's one particular partner I had. The second I talked to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like my soul sister. We connected right away. I'm like, I know we're going to do deals together. I know, this is going to be a long-term friendship. So that deal was instantaneous, or that connection that led to deals was instantaneous. Then there's other people where, the first call, it's like the first date, you're feeling each other out. Then you're like, okay, let's set up another call. And then you start to talk more. Then you talk about your family. And then you get that like slow fire relationship build that where you're like, okay, this is a person that it does have good ethics. This is somebody that is we have a synergistic vibe. We have the same goal, but different talents. So each relationship and each deal is different.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, it's some people it's going to take, especially on your first one, I feel like, it takes a little while unless you connect like that.
Mhm.
It
Which is
takes a little,
rare.
it takes maybe, 6, 8, just like a
Yeah.
relationship, a year, sometimes a couple years, depending on how
And
much.
there are some people we've met where they're great, but just like relationships, there can be two great people, but they're just not great together. So we've had that with other people too, where it's like, hey, you're great. If I meet somebody who I think is going to be great, I'll, refer them to you. But the connection wasn't there to do a deal
Yeah.
together. Or maybe we had this exact same talents and you don't need two master underwriters on the deal. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And it may be one of those where you're about to do a deal and then you're like, yeah, it still isn't actually coming together.
Yes.
It's a little more oil and water than what we
Yep.
thought.
Mhm.
So when you guys are having those discussions before you go out and sign a JV, what does that look like? Is it, right away you're going to sign the JV, or is it like, hey, let's figure this out together? I know this is a little basic because you guys have done more JVs, but are you guys having that discussion via email, text, and, sit down conversation, and then you take it to the attorney to draft the operating agreement?
Oh yeah, it's lots of conversations, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of telephone calls, a lot of text back and forth. And sometimes the deal doesn't go through just because of financing from the bank or whatever. It's not always a relationship issue. I don't think we've actually had any deal that we've gotten to the point where we didn't go through because something came up from the relationship between the partners or something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of due diligence, like with any deal, a lot of phone calls back and forth to make sure you have the same business plan. And okay, if we're going to go through with this, are we sure on this business plan? You're not going to want to change all the two bedrooms to one bedrooms after we close, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like if you're going to marry somebody, do you want kids? Where do you want to live? Like there's some basic questions in the business
Yeah.
plan before you go through with the deal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's always good to clear the air,
Yeah.
to get through it because if not, like you said, you could be, all of a sudden you close a deal and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna make, 3 bed, 2 baths and 1 bed,
Yeah,
one
it's like
bath. You're
that's not
like,
what I wanted to do. Yeah.
yeah, 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 good to get all the stuff out there on the table and have those sit down meetings for sure. Um, so I was gonna ask you another question, but yeah. So, how are you guys finding the deals? I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things when it comes to
Yeah.
finding deals, especially when maybe you don't have that much experience and you're
Mhm.
coming to the JV with money. Um, the deal is the biggest thing. The money will flow, but the deal is the biggest thing. And how are you
If
guys
the deal
finding
is
those
good,
deals?
the money will come. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
If you've underwrote it correctly,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, same kind of answer to a lot of stuff. Every deal is different. Like my husband and I are still sending out local letters. Like I'm still handwriting. Now that
really.
my son is almost 7 and his handwriting is getting better, maybe I'll start to pay him to do some of the writing on the envelopes. But to this date, I'm still doing that. We're still sending out some local ones that way, which is how we got this 8 unit JV that we're doing. We talk to brokers. One of our local partners who also is in Pennsylvania, he has a lot more, he's 20 plus years experience. He has a lot of really, really good broker relationships. So even though he's local, he's the one really talking to those brokers and presenting these deals that we're going forward with. We just closed on a 17-unit student housing building right in front of my hospital's medical school last Tuesday.
Nice.
So we found that through a broker relationship. It's also how we got an industrial deal development through him this year as well. And then some of these out-of-state ones, once you close a deal and people and brokers actually see, okay, they're not, somebody who's going to retrade and get it under contract, and then they're not going to go through with the deal, that gives you momentum too. So some of our out-of-state deals, we're currently working on a raise for a 40 unit. And that came through broker relationships from a deal that we closed previously with those partners. So
okay.
It all depends. When we're not local boots on the ground, we are not the ones finding those deals versus here in Pennsylvania where we are finding some.
How much time would you say you put, and maybe you track this really well, or your husband does,
My
but
husband does. Yeah, he is very good with the real estate professional status. We don't want to get audited. So yes,
yeah.
he is very good
Yeah.
at keeping
Okay.
track of that.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. You mentioned that earlier. Well, how much are you guys putting, time into writing letters? Because I know that, with your success already, and then also with your, full-time job, and then kids and everything else, how much are you guys putting into marketing on your own and
Yeah.
actually putting that sweat equity in there?
It's a good question. Not as much as at the beginning. I've been doing them about every 4 months. I'll spend, if I do it over a 1 week period, I'll spend a day to use Property Finder online to make my Excel list of the properties I want to do. Then I'll spend the next day getting my envelopes ready and kind of writing stuff. Then I'll spend the next day going through and typing in their name on the envelope. So overall, maybe it takes 18 to 20 hours per direct mail batch. And yeah, I'll do that every 4 months. So it's not that much time. But
Okay.
if you get one property out of it, that's, cash flow you can refi, that is absolutely worth the time that it took for that.
Yeah, it's definitely
Versus
worth
you
it.
working 20 hours and seeing hundreds of patients at the hospital to get that same return.
Yeah, exactly. That's worth it. You have the equity, you have the potential cash out or, burr of it. And, that gives insight, especially, my market writing, that little. And I'm not saying that little, I just mean that is very good because you guys are, it's more of a, sniper approach to getting the deals instead of sending out 5,000 letters, right?
Yeah, and some people do that, and that's great. But
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, I don't have the time for that.
Yes.
That's
No.
not our primary route of getting deals at this point.
Yeah, no, but you're still successful at it,
My
especially.
hand would cramp up before I got to the house.
Yeah, I've sat down and I write clients thank you cards, and I'll write 10. It takes me an hour, and I'm like, how did these 10? I thought 10 would take me 10 minutes, but yeah, you got to do everything else. So good for you
2
on
years
that.
ago, when my son first started to write his name, I was having him hand sign all the Christmas cards we sent out. He got to 10. He's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, your name has 4 letters. You're all right.
Yeah, you're just a couple more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're putting in time for marketing. You got basically a full-time job, and I feel like another full-time job doing all this other stuff. So when you guys, I would say the next 1 to 2 years, when you sit down and write a business plan, what does that look like for you guys on the portfolio side?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I feel like people always underestimate what they could do. When we started this 4.5 years ago, I never, ever would have thought that we would be where we're at. Our very first meetup we went to, I met a gentleman who his wife was a physician actually at my hospital. And he said, I have 22 units. I bought 22 units, and these were single families in 5 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, we had none at this point. I was like, 22 units in 5 years? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now we just crossed the 500 mark in 4.5. So I never would have thought that that's possible. So, looking a couple years out, it's hard to say. And our path may change. We might end up being, instead of on the active side, just more looking just to place our money in limited, partner positions, so that truly is the definition of just passive income. Because what we're doing right now, everybody says passive income in real estate, but we're still very active. We're networking, we're underwriting the deals, we're doing the deals. my husband was changing floorboards this week at one of our local properties. So it is still very, very active. So the long-term goal for us is to really be more on the passive side. Maybe be KPs, key principals on some deals where we're using our portfolio of wealth that we've built to sign with, again, good partners. It always comes down to the partnership.
Yeah.
But I could see ourselves going in that direction someday. I don't do any coaching or anything right now, but maybe eventually doing something like that to help other people too. So it's hard to say what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys have done, a lot of this, just like you said, over the short amount of time. So putting down, the next couple of years might be definitely tough. However, you know, I feel like some of this actually, hearing you speak and everything else has been a lot of organic stuff too,
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
meetups
Mhm.
and networking and stuff like that. I mean, granted, you have an intention to go there, but organically having those relationships and then
Yeah.
building the portfolio is for sure. I would still put it in the organic category. So how much time are you spending to actually go to meetups and have those conversations?
Yeah. Yeah. It changes by the week, sometimes just by the nature of my job.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm working a lot, 2, 3 days clinically at the hospital. Plus, I have a lot of administration meetings for the hospital. Maybe the kids have, a lot of soccer or ballet that week. So some weeks it's much less, maybe only a couple hours of networking calls. And it also depends, do we have an active deal closing right then? When you're getting close to the finish line, we're spending a lot of time as that due diligence comes up, going over everything with the lawyers and the bank. So everything kind of comes in waves.
Okay.
I would say in general, I'm doing at least 10 to 12 hours a week on real estate. My husband definitely a lot more,
Yeah.
obviously. That's on average. Some weeks, if I have completely off the hospital clinically, I'm doing a lot. I'm, writing my next business plan. I'm booking my next couple of podcasts or something like that. So it definitely comes in waves, some weeks more, some weeks less.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. And what have you seen the most success with on like networking? Has it been going to meetup.com and going to, networking like that? Or I don't know if do you do your own network group?
We do. We started just last year. We started holding local meetups. We're doing them quarterly in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, Pennsylvania. Our next one's going to be later in December.
Okay.
But we do still go to some local network. We try to go to one a month. Again, sometimes if we have a week off and there's 2 that week, we'll go to those. Last month we actually didn't get to any because we had a lot of deals closing. We had a lot of stuff going on and a lot at the hospital as well. Most of our networking has actually been through initially the mastermind group that we've joined. There's over 200 people. So it takes a lot of time to get through all those. And again, that's how we got a lot of our partnerships specifically from that group. Now that I'm doing more on social media, podcast, I'm getting some more organic kind of growth and traffic like that, networking with people. I
Yeah.
always like to go into every conversation. Like if I can learn one thing and give one piece of advice that might help that person, it was a successful 30-minute call with them. So I really try to keep my mind open and listen for advice from them too. Everybody has a story to share. Everybody has different life advice, whether it's real estate or just mindset or something else. You can always learn from somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. And that's good to keep that, open mind
Mhm.
versus, I know everything about it. I've done X amount of deals and I'm going to continue to do that. And ultimately
Always
I'm
learn from people. If you
yeah,
have that mindset, that's not good.
yeah, for sure. That fixed mindset before,
Mhm.
is gonna stop you.
Mhm.
And,
Yes, it will. Yep.
some people are, still successful at a certain degree with that mindset, but being open, being able to, have
Mhm.
the ability to grow and, still grow on what the success you guys have had is huge. So for you two, and looking at the next project, um, is your husband? I mean, he's still actively fixing up properties. So is that something that's still going to continue? And what do you think will phase out? Do you guys feel like you eventually will have an asset manager that will make sure that someone goes to the property, or does he
Yeah.
still really love to get his hands dirty and go work on properties on the
Yeah,
weekend?
he's funny. He likes to complain about it, but he also likes to go like to Home Depot and buy new toys and try them out. Like he just got this huge leaf blower for it's fall in Pennsylvania. All the leaves
Yeah.
are coming down. So I came home like 2 weeks ago. I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome at the properties." And I was like, "Okay, this is really a toy for you too to play with." So I mean, My dad was like that when I was growing up too. I remember every time he would go out to mow the lawn, he like really took that as his like downtime. So for some of the things, like I know he definitely doesn't want to change sewer pipes anymore, but he also likes to build on his skill sets and go out and, actually talk to people and tenants and stuff like that too. I don't see him giving that up completely. But ideally we would like to have our business be able to run itself if we need to go away for a month. His entire family still lives in France. So
Okay.
that's a big thing for us. His parents, his grandma just turned 99. So
Wow.
God bless her. She's
Yeah.
still very mentally sharp. We were just over in France for a couple of weeks in August, but we'd like to be able to take the kids now that they're, speaking and growing up
Yeah.
to France more. So you need to have a self-sustainable business to do that. So yeah, we still are learning and growing. So yeah, there's still some more business processes to put in place for especially our local deals.
Yeah, 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 100%. And what would you say for units wise, you guys are at for JVN and then having your own units that you own there in Pennsylvania? Is it like a 75-25? Like 25% is just you two owning yours and 75 or is all portfolio, or is that different?
Yeah, so the ones that just my husband and I own 100% ourselves is 22. So
Okay.
and remember we just crossed the 500 mark. So
Yeah.
pretty much everything is now JB or syndication, GP
Yeah.
partnership deals.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. And so when you stepped up to doing, those JV deals,
Mhm.
was there a difference in, going back to the attorney question, was there a difference in attorney that you brought in to not only write the contract, but, make sure that everything was put, the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted versus the initial one?
Yeah, so the local ones we well, this is the second attorney, which he is now more pretty much all real estate related. So yes, we did grow in that regard too. Again, they're local, but they really focus on just real estate. And then the other ones, depending on what state, our partners that are boots on the ground, they have lawyers that they've used in the past. So each deal has different lawyers, I'll say, which is actually awesome because we can
Yeah.
compare the operating agreements and see where the differences are. And even with contracts and stuff, we've taken bits and pieces and kind of are molding together the ones that we like. And then we have, the lawyer review those. So each one we're kind of getting closer and closer to the ultimate, that we like.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there when you're looking at those deals with, with the people that you're JVing, is there a floor that you and your husband stay on for a cap rate, IRR, and everything else? So if you see a property, it's like, hey, that's out because it doesn't hit our criteria. Doesn't matter if that it seems like a good deal.
Not based on the cap rate because the cap rate can change even by just going down the street or something like that. And that'll depend on the asset class too. Our nice new build A classes are going to have a lower cap rate than some of these heavier value add C classes that have a higher cap rate. So the cap rate per se, we don't. It's really the underwriting and what we can make the property cash flow for. In general, when we're looking at the JV syndication type deals, we want a minimum 16% IRR. Ideally, we like to have as close to 2 on the equity multiplier as possible. So we definitely do take all that into account, but just as much so we take account into the team and their track record and can they actually get the numbers that they have on their pro forma, or are they just saying, oh, I bet I can get it to an EM of 3 and they've
Yeah.
had no experience and their underwriting is terrible and they didn't factor in insurance or something like that. So
Yeah. 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 I feel like every time you see a pro forma, you're like, no, I don't know.
you have to dig into the numbers and do some due diligence. Yeah, we've seen some surprising things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like, I really got to do this on my own, and then we'll figure out, where we go from there.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you guys are structuring the deal, what give me an example of one of the best deals that you feel like you've done. Doesn't matter like really on the numbers. I just mean more so area, also location and area, maybe some numbers in there, but really overall, like, hey, I love this property on Main Street because of this X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, our favorite property that we've done was a 10 unit that my husband and I got on our own, not just because of the numbers, which actually were the best, but even some of the learning experience that we got from it. This was a direct mail campaign that we did. It was off market, obviously. 8 of the 10 units were rented at the time, completely under rented. It was an elderly seller who took care of the building but didn't upgrade it to 2021 standards when we
Yeah.
bought this building. So there was a lot of value add. The rents were $500. Some were even less than that. 450, I think, was the lowest one. Once we rehabbed the property and we actually got a bank loan to fund the rehab in draws to the contractor, we're now getting $1,100 to $1,200 per unit. We brought the 2 offline units online. So now it is completely the livable 10 unit.
Yeah.
We refied it at the bank, and we got 275% back on our initial investment in that property, which was huge. We still own it. It's still cash flowing. Michael rehabbed a lot of the units himself,
Oh,
actually.
really?
I should say, of the 8 of the 10 that were livable, the 2 that needed the full rehabs, those were 100% the contractors that did
Okay.
that. But even, he learned a lot. He really learned a lot. It's a beautiful, beautiful property. It's not in the best area of town,
Okay.
but it's the nicest property in that area. So there's actually a huge demand for this because it's the nicest units in that area. So every time we have a market that goes online, we get so many requests, and we have really good tenants in the building actually because of that.
Oh, really?
Mm.
And how long did it take you from purchase to all fully rehab to refinance?
18 months.
Okay, that's
18
really
months.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really good. Um, and so, what about negotiation, especially off-market deals? Give some tips on that. Like, you get someone, you mail them, you wrote a card, and then they give you a call, and from that inception of them calling you to when you negotiate and close the deal for
Yeah.
yours, like give some tips on how you're able to do that.
So number one, have thick skin, because some
Okay.
people want to know, how did you get my number? How did you get
Mhm.
my address? Like, F off. I don't want to
Yeah.
talk to you. So have thick
Yeah.
skin, because you never know, the attitude of the person that's going to be on the other line. Once you get past that, education, education, education. A lot of the sellers have this hyper inflated value in their head of what their property's worth. They still think it's 2 years ago when the interest rates were 2%, and they can
Yeah.
get, the sun and the stars, no inspection contingencies on their property. You have to say, well, no, interest rates are 9% now. And,
Yeah.
this is not what your property is actually valued at. And they think, oh, okay, well, you can rehab this. I paid my contractor 15 years ago X amount of money to. It's like, that is not the price of rehabs today. So you
Yeah.
really, I mean, that is our biggest barrier, really, their disconnect, what we want to pay, and then meeting somewhere in the middle and making sure the numbers still work. And that definitely does not work on every deal. Most deals it doesn't work on. But really, it's education for the sellers. We try to be creative with deals. We always offer or make an offer with some type of seller financing. Maybe they've never heard of seller financing. They think it's fake. They think it's a scam. We present the numbers. We have a contract drawn up by the lawyer. We give the lawyer's name, saying, no, you can call them. Maybe they've
Yeah.
not heard of this. Somewhere in between, maybe they hold only 10% down. Then we can get the rest from the bank. So again, bringing less of our own money down. So it's really educating the seller on why we can offer what we're offering. We're not ripping you off. This is, we've even offered if they wanted to stay in on the deal while we do the rehab on some people, but at the end we ended up just buying it, full outright ourselves. So yeah, it's a lot of back and forth negotiation. Sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. We've been told no. We've been told, okay, well, we have a higher offer we're going to get under contract. Then we get a call 4 months later saying, hey, that never went through. Do you still want to offer your price? So just because a deal is dead at the time doesn't mean you're, not going to hear back from them later. So
Yeah, that's true too. A lot of people come back around.
mhm.
It may take them a little while to realize they'll talk to 5 different people and they'll realize your offer was the best, or
Yes.
they wanted, or maybe it wasn't the best, but they want to work with you versus the 4 other
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that they talked
Yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's just the rapport. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, you remind me of my cousin or something."
Yeah,
That
yeah,
has nothing to do with my, personality or my business acumen. But it's just people.
yeah,
People are strange. You never know why. Sometimes they'll pick you over somebody else to do a deal. But
yeah, 100%. Well, the last question before going into, last few, how have you been able to, you and your husband work together on deals so successfully? I know, some spouses don't work together well, or maybe they do, but one spouse isn't on board and the other one is. Talk a little bit about that.
We definitely don't always get along, but we
Yeah.
we have the same mindset that even when we're mad, we love each other and we're going to work through it, whether it's a parenting discrepancy or whether it's a real estate discrepancy. I mean, we both have the same common goal to be successful, to help our family and help other people. So we've never lost target of that. We want to be ethical. We want to make friends. We want to, make long-term relationships. So we definitely have that goal in common. There's been many, many, many times weekly that we're disagreeing on something on a property. And I just said about educating the seller, it comes to educating each other too. I mean, Michael's very, very hands-on with the rehab. And I might say, oh, I want to put this countertop in. And he's like, well, it went up in price, X amount here at Home Depot. This is why we can't do it. So yeah, it's communication back and forth is why we're still married and why we're still doing business together and why we have 3 kids.
Well, yeah, you guys are a testament to obviously being successful doing it and then, doing it while you have a W-2. So that's inspiring, especially to hear through how real estate can be very, up and down. And you just talked about 9% interest rate,
Yeah.
going through, the lulls of that comparatively to what it was in 21, 2 years ago, completely different market, completely, everybody's on a high versus now it's, you're really struggling to make the numbers work.
Okay,
So
I'm okay. It's weeded out a lot of the people that were in it for quick money, so
for sure,
a
for
little less
sure.
competition right now, which I like.
Yeah, 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 100%. Or the people that were even in it from like 2014 on, it's weeded them out too.
Yeah.
So you guys are, ahead of that. So the last couple of questions. One is what type of online resource are you guys using to help you, or an app that's helping you to be more efficient at what you're doing today in your portfolio?
Yeah, we use Property Finder Online, Prop Finder Online. That's how we do our direct mail campaigns and how we are getting all the addresses of people. We can filter it out to how long they've owned the property, how much equity, are they in pre foreclosure, is it in their personal name, is it an LLC, is it a single family, multifamily. There are so many features. So that we've bought tons of properties by doing direct mail campaigns through that. For the underwriting specifically, we use a program called Synthesis. It's at
Okay.
the multifamilyanalyzer.com. Actually, one of the partners that we have, Chris Jackson, he just bought a deal, the 72 unit with him. We're closing on the 40 unit with him. But it's a fantastic underwriting tool. And
Nice.
that's coming from my husband who made up his own, he's the mechanical
Yeah.
engineer, spreadsheet, mastermind. So that definitely is helpful. And then having the virtual assistant, there are tons of different resources you can do to get a virtual assistant, and you don't have to have them full time. We do from what we
Yeah.
have, but you can even get somebody part time just to offload those little tasks that you really are taking away from higher functioning things that you could do for your business. So those are 3 big things that we heavily rely upon.
Nice, nice. And what about, you mentioned a couple of books, but what's one book that's really helped you get from, starting out to where you guys are today?
Yeah, I'd say the number one real estate specific book is the Burr book
Okay.
by Brandon Turner, because we use those principles, whether it's a single family, whether it's a fourplex, or whether it's these syndication deals we're doing. You find something that you buy low, you add value, you increase the rent, you refinance it. So that's great real estate book. I suggest that all the time to people. And then just from a mindset perspective, for anything in life, the compound effect is huge,
Yeah, that
because
one's really
people
good.
do want things that are an overnight success, and you take for granted these little action steps. Whether you don't want to go to the gym and work out for 3 hours for the first time, you're going to burn yourself out, never want to do it again, versus if you do 5 sit-ups every day, then you can add on to that. So it's anything in life, whether you're reaching out to one broker once a week and you keep being consistent about that. So yeah, the compound effect is a really good book that I also recommend to people.
Yeah, I love that book. It's been a few years since I read it, but it's really good.
Worth
Um,
worth a reread.
yes, yeah, yeah, reread for sure. Okay, and where can people find out more about you?
So our website, see it behind us, cloverkeycapital.com. That was my husband's Christmas present 2 years ago. It's not just a
Oh,
background. So
all right.
cloverkeycapital.com. You can look up my name, Lindsey Duguet, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm the only Lindsey Duguet. Nobody's made a fake profile yet. real one. So those are the three main places to find me, on LinkedIn too. And I don't have my VA doing any of that. If you message me, it will be me specifically answering you.
Okay, cool. Well, Lindsey, I appreciate you coming on today. This gives, other people inspiration, especially in this time of a changing market, and two, looking for other deals. It gives them, tools in the toolbox to be able to go out there and be successful. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.